Welcome back, everybody. We got a lot to talk about in this episode. From drip moldings to installing our bulletproof racing dual pump setup, which also involved fixing a fuel leak problem, and then getting the car ready to bring it over to ASM so it can get its final check over and a good ASM tune. So as always, thanks so much for watching, guys. And yeah, stick around. I got some stuff to cover in this video that you probably won't see, that I won't necessarily talk about in my other videos. So thanks again for watching. So real quick, we're going to start with these drip moldings that are on the car. I ended up taking the ones that were on the silver car and putting them on the red car here. And I was lucky I had the silver car to reference because these clips that hold them on are definitely, there's a lot of different style clips that go in different areas. So as you can see now, I'm just getting this passenger side one bolted on, or pushed in place, I should say, not bolting anything in place. But as we move over to driver's side here, you can see all the clips that it entails, or at least the ones that go on the car, and you can see how they kind of go. There's like a yellow, and then a purple, and then a blue. I think they change colors based on thickness because I think they get a little bit thinner as you go up. And there's a whole bunch of white ones on the top. So these are all the clips, and the gray ones in the rear. So these clips are the ones that kind of do a lot of what actually holds down this drip molding piece. Within the drip molding itself, you can also see these other clips that also help hold it in place. But honestly, I feel like these do a little bit less than the clips that are actually on the car. Those seem to be the main ones that really hold things in place. This one is actually the same one that's on the car. You can see how they can slide around in there a little bit. That one I had to take off actually because it was already on the car, or I should say I put it on the car first. But for the most part, lining up those clips isn't too bad. You line things up and you push it in place. But the tricky part is kind of getting it to snap in place without feeling like you're bending things too much, or just getting them to hold in. The first time I ever really did it with the drip moldings, it wasn't too bad. It's too bad these are pretty expensive items. I know from what I've heard most recently is that if you want to buy brand new OEM ones of these drip moldings, you definitely want to check out your local dealer. If you have an OEM Mitsubishi dealer, check them out. Now let's move on to this double pump setup. I'm going to tell you a lot about the setup, a lot of what I really like, a couple things that I don't like as much as I walk through this process, and I will make a detailed video about this install video. It just might take me a while. For now, I just wanted to kind of update this build series. So if you're looking for a very detailed video, that might be coming. Otherwise, if you have questions on this setup, I hope I will get them all answered for you in this video, or at least a good portion of them. First thing here, with most of these dual pump setups, you want to use your OEM fuel pump level sending, portion here. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm putting in the leveler or the OEM fuel gauge sensor, plugging that in, plug and play, works great. It's awesome. For the most part, this bulletproof setup is really good. I like the build quality of everything. It looks great. As you can see, I ordered it with one pump because I'm a cheapskate. I had that other 255 pump in the Silver EVO that wasn't that old. So I decided not to just get it preloaded with two pumps right away, which I do regret, honestly, because one of the nice things about this setup compared to some others is you can buy it preloaded, and I would definitely recommend taking advantage of that. Just go ahead and buy it with the pumps you want, and it will come to you loaded and ready to go, pretty much drop in ready. And that's great, especially if you saw my other video where I did the radium one, and I had to preload it, and I spent a lot of time just trying to get everything together to load the pump. So of course you'd still have to put your fuel level gauge on, but you wouldn't have to load in the pumps in this bulletproof racing one if you order this. However, always some sort of issues, and again, a reason I would just order preloaded. For me, it turns out they've made a change in the design of this Whirlpool 255 pump in the time since I bought this one, and since the pump that came with one, or I should say the hanger that came with a 255. Honestly, for a second there, I was like, is this a knockoff pump or what? And I did some Googling, and it did seem to turn out that just Whirlpool updated the design, mostly kind of making it taller where you plug in the electrical connection portion. It was a bit taller. But then also what really inconvenienced me is they seem to have now made it thicker where the tube connects. Right now I'm moving the fuel pump. It's supposed to be tight and it's moving around in there. That's a problem because the connection point where you squeeze that hose over the point where it pushes out the fuel is like smaller on the older ones. So of course the hose that was supplied with this kit is actually meant for basically a larger diameter output. So whatever, do what you need to do. Again, I wish I would have just ordered it with another pump in there right off the bat, because that would have just saved me the headache. But I did kind of want to show you guys loading this pump in my other video when I'm more detailed, but we'll see how much of that I actually show now that I'm showing you here. I had this harder rubber fuel line hose from some other fuel pump stuff I did. So my workaround for this, and I don't necessarily recommend it, but it seemed to work fine. So I could use this pump because I was in a pinch too. I had to get this stuff done. I'm almost time to the racing season where I really want this car drivable. So what I just did is I put this other portion of the hose over this to basically extend it and make the OD size, the outer diameter size of this, a little bit bigger. And that way, once I put it in the other hose and clamp it, it should, clamp sufficiently and not allow any excess fuel to be going where it shouldn't be, because obviously you want the pump from the fuel to be shooting up and going up towards the engine and not kind of squirting out the sides of here if it's not tight enough. So I can't say I necessarily recommend doing this, but I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it should be fine. It seems like it's fine. The car just got off the dyno, honestly, at ASM, and everything seemed fine from all accounts there. So there you go. That stuff I'm not going to really share in the install video, honestly, when I make the full detailed install video, because it's more of a me problem. So now, after kind of tinkering around, I got this set up to load my second pump. And of course, it is pretty simple still either way. You're mostly just plugging it in, pushing it in place, and then tightening up a clamp, assuming everything all goes well. Another thing I really like about this Bulletproof Racing pump setup is that they actually have something to hold the pumps, like the Venturi valve, I think if I'm saying that right, type of thing, the siphon tube that's in the middle has a bolt that you screw in place, but then it also tightens up and holds, it kind of clamps onto the pumps itself, so they're less likely to push out of place either way. And that's a really nice thing because, again, I think with the Radium one, there wasn't really anything holding it in place other than the clamps where you clamped it down to the hoses. So as you can see, to reinstall that pump, I did end up removing the fuel level sending part just to make everything easier and to work in there easier and to show it. So I did have to double up my work again and take that out and put that fuel level sending back in. But again, really solid piece. I really like the look of this. I hope it holds up great. It looks like it should. So here's just a final shot of what this hanger looks like. And again, pretty much this is what it could look like just coming right to your door. Gasket, everything, other than the fuel level sending. As I mentioned again, if you will need to use your OEM piece there, but just plug that in and then you should be pretty much drop-in ready on this Bulletproof Racing piece. Now here's where I got a little creative, at least as best as I can get creative here. This is the center glove box, not glove box, center console, I guess you'd say it. So just behind your cup holders. And this is where I found to be the best place to put the box, the electrical box for wiring, the relays and stuff like that for this bulletproof setup. And as you can see here, I just drilled some holes in it, cut it out, and then made sure it could fit in here where the electrical wire that runs to your pump could run through the back, and then slid the box inside so it would fit. And then obviously I've just did a test fit. I had this stuff kind of outside the car to make sure this would fit. And I do really like this now that it's honestly in place, because it's cool that these do have lights to light up to let you know that the pumps are on and kick in. So I can open up my, that cover and just look, I can glance at it. So it's not way out of sight, not way out of mind. But where you mount this will depend on where your battery is and stuff too, right? Like if your battery's in your trunk, then you might just put all this in your trunk and it might be easier to run there too. So there's a lot of variables when it comes to installing a dual pump setup, and I'm going to cover some of them in this video, but I'll cover more of them probably in my full install video. But where you mount this box is of course one of the variables, and where your battery is in your car is going to be another one. So now we're back to the inside of the car, so you can see exactly where this will sit. And I had to cut out a little bit of the carpet here just to make room to run that wire down to the back. And then I just wanted to run it underneath the carpet and then pull it back through where it'll just sit underneath the rear seat. Full disclaimer, as always, when you're working with fuel, if you're doing any of this stuff yourself, be smart, wear safety glasses. When you're working around fuel, it's obviously dangerous and flammable. So, take it to a professional if you are working on fuel stuff and you're not sure what you're doing. Otherwise, just be smart to make sure you don't ever start anything on fire. But anyway, yeah, so I ran the cord towards the back there, and then I was able to set that interior piece down with the box in place. And I have a ground wire here that I'm going to connect actually as well and run my power wire, both those, of course. The ground wire ended up using a bolt that I would normally use to bolt this center piece down on. I just ended up bolting it down right there, just because the ground wire is not super long on here. As much as I love this box makes install so much easier for wiring. I love the bulletproof box here with the relays and stuff. I do wish they maybe added a couple feet to each one of these lines, especially this power one, because this one just barely reached the battery, as you can see me fishing it through a hole in my firewall at this point. So if that was a little bit longer, just a foot longer, maybe even a half foot, would have been great for me. Of course, you can extend it. The whole point, I think, with this is still that you could run the kit wherever you need to, and you can add wire as needed. But wiring sucks. I hate doing wiring. That's why I love the box, and that's why I wanted to not have to basically do much cutting and potential soldering and or wire connections. So I ran the vacuum hose already too, as you can see. So the vacuum hose is now ran in there as well, because I'm using that vacuum hose as a boost source. So the secondary pump will kick in once I checked it. I think it was like 8 pounds of boost is when it's kicking in for me. Again, extension wire, if you needed a wire to extend yours a little bit longer. I thought I would have to use that one, but I didn't have to end up using an extension. I just added this piece so I could bolt it onto my positive battery terminal as I cut to here. And so yeah, I just bolted that wire down, and luckily I was able to kind of just slide that box a little bit forward enough within that interior piece, and then it was able to connect. I did have to modify. If you watch my battery video, I've done this before too, but I modified the positive battery terminal cover just to make some room for that wire as well. But just running one wire makes this cleaner as well, because obviously if you're doing dual pumps and you run each pump power wire like a different setup where you're running a power wire for each relay, you'd have more than one wire running to the terminal, to the battery terminal. So it's nice in this case to keep it simpler. So again, can't say enough good stuff about having that that bulletproof racing box, assuming it holds up like it should. So we've already moved on to the back seat, and that's of course how you there's access panels to get to your fuel pump setup. But before we do that, I did this in a particular order where I wanted the car to still be drivable under the OEM pump, but I wanted to do about as much as I could to get stuff installed. What we're looking at now is this pesky nut that holds part of these OEM lines in place, that kind of bolts them down to the edge of the tank. And I'm going to cut magically to where showing you, look, I got that nut off. It's just sitting next to that stud now. This is a pain in the butt to get to. You already should have your fuel tank dropped down to get in there. There's really no way there's no way to actually get your hands in there if you didn't drop the fuel tank down a little bit. So I already did that. Again, I'll probably be more detailed and organized with this in my final video, but for now, just covering with what I had to do to loosen that up. So not only do we need to loosen that up to get those old lines out, but we need to bend the fuel tank again a little bit, bend part of an ear that's on it to make room for our bigger lines. Right now I'm showing you the OEM feed line and the OEM return line. In this case, again, what I'm going to do is do what I did in my black car. Instead of running a full return line, which I don't think I need because I'm just running 255s and I'm not running 1,000 horsepower here, so I'm not actually using as much fuel. I just have like the option to run a boatload more fuel now. But what I'm going to do is use my OEM feed line and turn it into my return line. So that fuel returning back from the engine is going to go through that larger OEM feed line, because the feed line from OEM is larger than the feed line, or larger than the return line OEM. And you've of course just been looking at what it looks like underneath the car. If you've seen my other install video, you've seen a lot of the same stuff already as far as what we're removing. We just got to get some stuff out of our way. So first thing is part of the e-brake, getting this e-brake bolt out. As you can see, I did a little trick there, tightening and loosening. If you think a bolt's going to break, spray it. And then also tighten, loosen, and then also heat. If you can get heat in there, it's going to help. So we got that bolt out without breaking it off, which is good. Of course, this car is a lot less rusty than my silver one, but it's still a little rusty. And then there's a plug-in for the ABS. So we're going to unplug that plug-in as well. And this is the ear that we kind of need to bend over, and we need to get that plug-in off of that part of the fuel tank. That circle right there is kind of where the stud was sticking up that we had to get that nut off of. That's really hard to get to. Of course, lowering your fuel tank, there are 4 nuts holding your fuel tank in place. I'll cover that in more detail later. But that's what I was just doing. I was removing one of those nuts. So now we're getting as much of those lines out of the way as we can, and I'm starting to bend this ear of the fuel tank out of the way. And of course, actually get this plug-in off too. Get that plug-in off first, and then we can start using needle nose pliers and stuff to start bending this ear over, just to make sure there's plenty of room for those large fuel lines that we're going to be running. I believe it's 10 AN that I bought. No, 8 AN and 6 AN. So 8 AN dash AN, however you say that. 8 and 6, I believe, is the size I got. And again, that's another variable in a dual pump setup. You can pick what lines you want to come if you buy an install kit, stuff like that. So lots of variables when it comes to installing fuel pumps. And I found it works well to kind of run where the stock lines go. I was able to do this last time where you just run the fuel line in between the other lines and use the OEM brackets. And that worked pretty well here again, too. So, of course, removing these pieces that hold it in place. And then popping out, honestly, I just ended up popping out these plastic pieces. There's a plastic clip type thing inside. Popped out the plastic piece, and then there's just rubber around it, which is great. So then you could run the hose, and then the rubber is kind of shielding it. Some of them I just cut, like this one here. I just ended up cutting because there's that whole plate that goes underneath it. So I just cut it out and made room for it here. Another one here, this one just popped the plastic piece out and make sure our hose will fit. So here's a look at the Bulletproof Racing kit setup that came with the car. It has 2 straight ends. One end has the 90 on it, and the other end is not connected, but they gave you a 45, basically degree one to put on it. And the way it's going to end up working, what I assume they want you to do is run the 90 to the actual fuel pump hanger. And of course, we got some larger and smaller, diameters here because one's the feed, one's the return. So for the feed that pumps fuel out from the fuel pump to the front of the car, I'm running the 90-degree elbow up through. I'm going to feed it up above the fuel tank and then run the straight connection point of that down towards the front of the car, following the other OEM lines. And again, once your fuel tank is dropped down and everything, it shouldn't be too bad to actually feed it through. But we're going to feed that through. And as you obviously noticed too, I have these taped up and covered up because it is dirty in there. We don't want fuel in our brand new lines. We want fuel in our brand new lines. We don't want dirt in our brand new lines right away. So as you can see, I just taped it off and put some protective stuff, just paper tissue in there just to keep dirt from getting inside of it. So I recommend doing that anytime you're feeding these lines through someplace where it could be collecting dirt. So once that was up and through, we're just going to leave it sit for now because, of course, I'm not actually swapping everything yet. Running the lines is something you could kind of do, and while keeping the car still running and driving, as long as you keep your OEM lines in place, you could run these aftermarket fuel lines, and then obviously I wouldn't necessarily drive it a whole lot if you're worried about your lines getting dirty again. But if you just needed to drive it in and out and move the car around, you can get the stuff set up ahead of time, kind of like I did. Because I knew this whole process of installing this dual pump setup would take a long time. So I spent as much time as I could, whenever I had the time, working on little things without fully making the car undrivable. So of course, we're just running that feed line and then modifying another clip. This one I actually took a little bit of grinding to. I ground it down to make room for that larger pump or larger line. And as you can see, it looks like it should fit pretty good. And a lot of this requires patience and it requires a lot of time. And I'm very lucky I have a hoist. I give everyone credit for doing this on the ground when they don't have a hoist. Because, man, running these lines and stuff honestly kind of sucks. Installing a dual pump setup is a lot of work no matter what. But I love that this Bulletproof Racing one just takes a lot of the pain points out of it, even though it's still kind of a pain overall. And honestly, I'm just going to speed through a lot of this, running this hose. I'll probably go into more details again in a video that's just all about installing this kit. But I also want to mention, this is one of the things that, you're going to get the more honest feedback side of me on with this is, obviously I did a radium install before the Bulletproof Racing one. And the one thing I really liked about the radium one is their line install kit and the way their fuel filter came with a bracket to mount everything in place, and it was closer to the front of the car, and it was just a really clean, nice look. That's one of the best things with the Radium kit, I think, is just the way that fuel filter kit is to install. So if I kind of had to combine best of both worlds, I would like to get that Radium um, fuel filter and their bracket that holds it in place. Of course, you'd have to probably do your own lines as well, or get the radium lines if you wanted to make that work with the rest of the bulletproof kit. Because the bulletproof kit, you'd have to cut your lines, to get that filter closer to the front, because the filter is closer to the front on that one, or do some changing. Again, there's a lot of variables. But now we're towards the front of the car, and again, I'm just showing where I used the OEM brackets, the OEM hangers, and same thing up here as most of the other ones. I'm just going to take this bracket off, and I'm going to modify it for a larger hose, so a larger hose can fit in there. This one and other plastic ones as well. Of course, I cut things out, made sure they fit well, but also these hoses have some protection around the outside, but of course it's fuel. It's a fuel hose, so I want to do a little bit extra. I try to make sure there are no sharper points or anything. And then I also just added a little bit of electrical tape, honestly, to that piece to make sure, just had a little bit more stuff to rub against that wasn't some plastic. I also ran the wrong hose first, because for some reason I kind of was basing it off the way the Radium kit went, where the fuel filter was up closer to the front of the car. So the first time I ran the hose that you currently see me running now, I ran the one with the 90-degree end on it. And then I decided that that was not going to work the best, especially trying to attach the hose to the actual fuel pump hanger in the rear of the car. So what I just did is I fed the open end of this hose up front. So the open end of this hose where there was no connection point on it yet, where the 45-degree one would be connected with the 8AN fuel fitting that needs to be added. So that's ran up towards the fuel line, or towards the fuel rail right now. And now I'm just kind of mocking up and getting this line in place and getting it held up towards the front of the car and fitting it through the rest of the way. And here's a look at what it looked like with most of those clamps in place. This one on the 1 second closest to the front, I just kind of cut it and made room for it to sit up in there, and then zip tied it later. That's where the fuel filter would be, and then this is where it's going to flip around or flip up and over towards the pump hanger above the tank. Now, speaking of variables, I found a 6AN to 5/16 fuel quick disconnect, because part of what, the challenge here for me, wanting to use the OEM return line or the OEM feed line as a return line, if you run the whole hose they gave me a whole hose. I could have ran a full hose and ran it up, but I would have had to make more room for it, and I still would have had to figure out eventually how to make the connection point, because I'm using an OEM fuel pressure regulator, which is only a 1/4 inch hose, and I would have had to figure out how to get that 1/4 inch hose to a 6AN, because 6AN is the return size from the pump, or the fuel pump hanger I bought. So obviously I'm removing the OEM pieces now. Now I've kind of committed to making sure I drop in this pump. So I removed the return line, and then I'm removing the feed line here again, OEM feed line. Be smart around fuel. Again, I'm leaking fuel. As you would have seen earlier too, I used a bolt to block the line so all the fuel wasn't just dripping forever. And be careful around the fumes, of course. You're gonna, don't breathe in too much fumes. And here's where this piece is going to connect. This disconnect seemed to work good for me. It was worth the money for me to make this connection right here. And I did bend this line because it was kind of pointing straight up and didn't give me as much room as I wanted. You can bend these lines a little bit. They should be able to move, enough. You want to be careful, of course, not to break or kink them, because they are hard lines. But just bending it enough to give me a little bit more access worked out well. And then this quick connect honestly just kind of pops on in place. What I didn't end up showing later, but what I would do potentially is screw on your 6AN first, and then just pop this on. That's obviously the easier way to actually do it. But I think I just wanted to make sure it would line up well enough. So we'll get to that part a little bit later as well. So now I am removing the OEM lines. I can kind of get this, obviously I need to disconnect them from the OEM pump. And so I can remove these OEM lines and try to get them out of the way completely. Not the easiest to get out of the way, but we do need that extra room. So we're going to pull this piece out. And with the fuel filter that comes from Bulletproof Racing, you can see it does have a flow direction. So you want the flow arrow to be pointing towards the engine in this case, because we're running fuel up to the engine. So we're just going to tighten these connections as well. Again, straight fittings. I don't see why you wouldn't want to use the straight fittings for at least if you're running a fuel filter like this. And just kind of getting everything back in place with these mounts, these OEM pieces that hold it in place. I did come to learn through doing this that one of them is longer, one of them is shorter, because I accidentally put the short one where the long one was. So I'm going to show you here that you can tell there's actually difference in length. So just be careful of that. And now comes to the point where we can start removing the nuts that hold this OEM fuel hanger down. Be smart about this too before you pull this out. If there's a lot of dirt and debris around, take a vacuum, clean it up, at least try to wipe up and blow away a lot of that loose debris so it doesn't just fall into your fuel tank once you open up your OEM fuel hanger. So now, of course, I did run, I had a different hose I tried to run first, and I filmed that, and then I'm just not including it here because the hose I thought that had these ends pre-made on it, it was like a foot too long, and it would have just not worked right. So I still had to end up cutting this hose that came with this Bulletproof Racing kit. Of course, this hose is made to run all the way to the front. I shortened it up a lot, so it's only like a couple feet long, and it just runs right to this rear portion of the car and connects to that quick connect part that I bought. For whatever reason, doing this connection on this line, they always kind of suck. Steel braided is way worse. These ones aren't too bad, but this 6AN one was hard to get in place when I did the front with the 8AN. That one went actually really good. But this one, it's just hard to get this portion of this connection over that braiding. But I'm trying to show you inside. You can see how far the hose is pushed in. So once you get that pretty much all the way up, butted up against where the threads are in there, you should know you got it good. And if the braiding on the outside looks kind of stupid, it's probably fine. It's just kind of a protective braiding right there anyway. But do your best, of course, to get all that in place. So I'm getting this portion of it all tightened up. So once we get that all set up, that is the return line at the fuel pump hanger side. So that part is pretty much taken care of. We're going to have to do more under the hood, of course, though, with this return line. And the feed line is pretty much set from this side as well. So just one final shot here. You can see where both lines are kind of ran and run all the way up to a filter and then back towards the front of the car. All right, back to popping out our OEM hanger. This is always a bit tricky. It's not that much fun, but you can hold it at just the right angle and it comes out. Good old Mitsubishi, they made it right for you. It fits, believe me, it comes out. But then you also need to watch out, usually for your fuel level sensor. I had already taken mine out because I wasn't driving the car. I didn't really care. I did just honestly pop out my fuel level sensor and then put it in the new hanger. So again, I could just come and just try to drop this in on the different day. Because honestly, I spent 4 or 5 days filming to make this video. And here's our bulletproof setup. Pump ready to go in. Again, it uses the OEM connector. Plugging that right in is awesome. It's nice that you can just plug the OEM connector right in. One last look at everything, make sure it looks good to go. And this one's also a little bit easier to get in without that stupid metal ring kind of floating around. So that's another nice thing about this setup is it's a little bit easier to drop in general, as far as at least squeezing it through the tin metal piece here. And of course, you use the OEM nuts. You can tighten up the nuts to tighten down this whole unit. And then this one piece here, this yellow piece where you screw in one of the bolts for the cover, or one of the screws for the cover. This one was a pain in the butt last time too. So again, I'm like, I'm just getting this out of the way. It seems like when you run the feed hose, it just wants to sit right where this yellow thing is, and it's protruding down on the bottom side. So it gets in the way of this line. So I'm like, I'm just going to hack this thing up and get it out of the way so it doesn't bother me when I'm trying to line up this feed line and tighten it up to our hanger. And this is honestly like my 3rd attempt or 4th attempt at doing this because it's not the easiest thing to do. This is a tight squeeze. It's kind of a pain to get in here and make sure this is lined up right. And you really do want to make sure this is lined up right, and it starts going on pretty easy because these connectors are kind of like a thin material, if you will. Like you can just screw up the threads pretty easy if you're not paying attention. So make sure you have this kind of lined up and that you can just finger tighten it and then it's going pretty good before you over tighten it or anything. And I'm actually showing the return line here first. The return line was a little bit easier to line up and get in place, but then I took another shot at the feed line and got the feed line in place as well. And again, great part about this, you just plug this in. Boom, really nice. Of course, tighten up your hoses. I'll go over that in more detail probably in my final install video with this dual pump setup, but tighten up all your connections here. And then one final plug-in, this one that goes to the box that they send you with the relays and the activation switch and stuff like that. So there you go, that part. Pretty manageable. All right, let's move under the hood now, and we're going to go ahead and adjust or make some changes to our fuel rail. And again, as I mentioned, there's so many variables here when it comes to doing this setup. One of the main variables is your fuel rail. What rail are you running? What connections does that rail have? Are you using an OEM regulator or not? All those things come into play when you're buying and planning to put in a dual pump setup. This car had a radium fuel rail, which is fine, great, good to have, but it had a connection where it went from 8 ORB, and that's going to be crucial in a second. It goes from 8 ORB to 6 AN. And sorry if I'm not using the proper terms, right? Dash AN, dash 6, whatever you want to call it. I need to remove that dash 6 and upgrade to dash 8. So we're gonna come back to that in a second. I removed the battery, of course, and now the shot right now is showing, closer to our brake master cylinder where the hoses come up from the bottom of the car. And we're just gonna remove our OEM return line. Should be able to get that right out of the way, take that off. It's also probably worth noting that, your return line is usually a lower pressure than your feed line. So your feed lines are the ones where the connections are more important. Obviously, any fuel leak could be catastrophic, so you need to be mindful of that. But you're going to see more pressure on the feed side than you will on the return side. And now, again, something I already had. The guy before me bought this radium rail kit that came with this line and it came with this adapter to attach to the OEM feed line. And we're going to continue to use that adapter, but we're going to use it for our return line. Again, I'll get to that in a second. But this is where I ran into problems, and this is where I got mad. It was my own fault, but I took out this piece and realized I bought the wrong piece. I bought an 8AN dash whatever, a dash 8 to dash 8, and it was supposed to be this one, an ORB to AN, both from, in my case, 8. So if you're running a radium rail, you need the 8 ORB to 8 AN connection, and that's what I got in my left hand here. And you can see the size difference there. It's a lot bigger. So a day later, or multiple days later, I finally had this magic of video editing. It looks like I just did it, 2 seconds later, but I didn't have that piece and that was my fault. I'll admit it. But I put a little bit of oil on the seal so I could then, of course, tighten that up. Put a little oil on the seal because it's less likely to tear when you're installing it. That's why I put a little bit of oil outside there. And here's the 45 connector that we need to connect to our 8 AN feed line that we already ran. And again, this one went a lot smoother than the one in the rear, but they also had that taped off when they cut it, which was nice because then it kept it from fraying so much. And that also may be part of the reason why it went on so much easier. I tried to tape the other side with mine, but I only had electrical tape, and I don't think it was the right kind of tape to make it work. But again, checking the inside and making sure that hose is pushed in all the way, or at least most of the way, and you should be good to go. And tighten up that connection. And then we're gonna feed that hose up to the fuel rail, and then just tighten it up to the rail. Of course, make sure you tighten up all your fittings to the rail. Showing things in a little bit of a reverse order again, just so they make a little bit more sense if I group things together. But this is more the return side work. And in this case, I am running, again, my OEM fuel pressure regulator, and the return line on that is only about 1/4 inch. So it's a bit tiny, but again, for me, I don't think I need too much more. I just felt like I was right at the edge of maxing out a single 255 fuel pump. So I wanted a dual pump setup, and I'm just doing a little bit of extra stuff to go along with it to support it. So right now I'm moving this hardline portion, pulled up the OEM hardline portion of the return line. And now there is a connector you can buy to make this whole connection point to your OEM feed line. What used to be the feed line will now be the return line. And I had one that has a 1/4 inch adapter. So again, it's a little weird potentially that I'm running a 1/4 inch that then expands out to basically a 5/16. I believe there's the OEM like hardline size. So there's obviously a bit of a pinch point of it being this smaller fuel hose for a while until it gets to the larger size hose. I don't think I honestly think it's kinda just overkill for what I'm doing. So as you can see, 1/4 inch fuel line, make sure you use fuel line, not just vacuum hose if you're running fuel stuff. That's what I found to work really well, is to have that adapter to, just push on, to that 1/4 inch, and that way I could run, again, that OEM feed line, and just turn it into a return line. Honestly, most people doing this probably aren't gonna be trying to still stick with their OEM regulator. Once you're running enough fuel, you're probably running an aftermarket fuel pressure regulator, and then your connection points are a bit easier, and you don't have to deal with this pain that I kinda had to try to get hoses to downsize, to match. And again, probably worth pointing out that you can buy like this bulletproof hanger with OEM connection points, but I've prefaced this before and I'll say it again. If you do that, you still need to add in a fuel filter either way, because those fuel socks on the pumps are not like a full filter. And if you switch out to one of these style dual pump setup hangers, the hanger itself is deleting your OEM fuel filter, because your OEM fuel filter is built into your OEM hanger, which is kind of weird, dumb design. But so even if you bought this hanger from any company and it had the OEM connection points and you just dropped it in and we're like, oh, it's easy, I don't have to run any lines. I would still recommend putting in aftermarket fuel filter, which means you're probably going to mess with the lines anyway. So there's one final shot of our feed line. You can see where our feed line runs through as well. So now, finally, for me, like 3 days later, I can test this system. I unplugged my crank position sensor, so I could kind of just try to prime the pump a little bit here, get some fuel ran up to the front of the car before it would officially try to start itself up. So I went and plugged that back in and then cranked the car over. Of course, it still had to do some pumping of the fuel, but eventually she fired right up. But this is a crucial moment to check for fuel leaks, because I just, reran this whole stinking fuel system. So there are a lot of spots, a lot of connections that I want to check for. The main ones, of course, being under the hood, everything around the rail, then at the fuel filter location, and then at the pump or the fuel hanger location. So those are all spots that we're going to check for fuel leaks. So let's walk through everything at the rail. Looks good. Nothing was wet around there. No fuel smells. Everything seemed pretty good. Looking inside, just giving you a quick glance at what the box looks like. You can see that's where the box is. And then on the pump side here, the hanger side, everything looks good. Nothing wet there. But underneath the car, unfortunately, we got a nice little drippy drip right where the fuel filter connects. So again, thankfully, car's still up on a hoist, so I get to just bring it up in the air and take a look and try to figure out what the heck's going on here at this connection point. Tried to just tighten it up a little bit more. It was definitely sketchy. Basically what happened, and it's unfortunate, but it happens sometimes, this fuel fitting from Bulletproof Racing, the straight connection, it just ended up, they stripped the threads when they installed it, and then it never got fully tight. So it was loose, and this fitting is garbage. So luckily, my dad had one of these exact fittings I needed in stock, this -8 AN fitting hose connection. So as you can see, I got the new one here on top, and the bottom one's got the strip threads. And so what I'm going to do is install that one on the hose, and then I can at least finish this job. So I was lucky that I had that in place. Otherwise, I would have been waiting even longer to order that part. So sometimes it's good to just have, of course, the parts in stock and have extra parts if you needed. And here's a shot of the box just so you can see what it looks like when I start up the car. You'll see that it turns on a light, so you know that that primary pump is activated. And then you can hear it click in place, of course, as well, which is kind of nice about the position that it's in. There's another wire in there, just in case you're curious. The other wire in there is for ECU activation. So if you're running an aftermarket ECU, you could run that other wire that's in there. I, of course, didn't need to use it for anything because I don't have an aftermarket ECU, and I ran a boost source right to that. But there we go. It is fixed, or at least as fixed as it needed to be, not leaking fuel. So that's great. And we can drive the car. The car is drivable with this dual pump setup. Hooray! Yes, but this is just a big job. It reminded me how much of a big job this is. When I did it on the black car, it was a pain too, and I kept trying to do it in different steps, which I'm not necessarily mad that I did it in multiple steps, but sometimes it just makes it seem longer because instead of just spending a whole day to get the job done, I'm just going to do it in little steps. But sometimes the little step things are nice because then you can make sure you got all the parts you need to actually complete the job. Because, like I said, lots of variables on what you need. All right, here comes a crash course at the ending because I said this took so long. I had the car on the trailer, hauled it over to ASM to get it tuned, dropped it off at ASM, found a friend, a much better looking friend that was there. A very cool, sharp, EVO looking 9 was there. But I dropped it off at ASM so he could give it a good once over, a good check, check some of the work I did, give it a good front end alignment since he can do alignments. And then I also had him, of course, put on the dyno and get ourselves a dyno tune. So I hope you won't be disappointed. But of course, working around my schedule, part of what I want to do is get this car racing again. And in order to do that, I needed to work around Andy's schedule at ASM and just had to figure out how to get, everything coordinated. And the best situation was just to drop it off and let him work on it whenever he was available. Very grateful that he could even squeeze me in this time of year because I know it's peak racing season for a lot of people. So I didn't document anything while it was at ASM, but I did wait long enough to record this video that as I record this voiceover, I did get word that the car is done. It's all ready to go. So hopefully I'll be actually racing it soon, depending on when this video is released. Maybe I'll have already raced it, but hopefully some dirt spectator racing are coming up this weekend if it doesn't rain. But what you've all been waiting for, maybe, what you might be curious about is the dyno numbers. And it did put down about 420 wheel horse, and about 400 torque, 405 foot-pounds of torque. So that's good. It's pretty much right in line with my black car. I don't know what's magical about my black Evo, but my black Evo just can seem to do more. And my black Evo is a little bit higher, despite being pretty much the exact same setup. But the black Evo is on a stock 9 turbo, and the turbo on this red car is some sort of 20G something. It's definitely got bigger compressor wheels on it. But either way, the good news is I did reflect back and look at the old silver dyno sheet from the last time I dynoed the silver car, which was pretty much this whole car setup that's in the red car now. And it was only 370 horse back then, and we got it up to 420. So major changes since then are, of course, the turbo, which again, I honestly don't think maybe helped a whole lot. But what probably did help is the exhaust change. I switched it from that quieter HKS exhaust to the Busher exhaust, and I put on an aftermarket intercooler. So going from a stock OEM intercooler to aftermarket intercooler, and of course, the fuel system upgrade that we just completed made sure we didn't run out of fuel as well. So there you have it. That was me rambling for a good long time about this whole project. And if you're still here and still listening, I really appreciate it. You guys that stick around to the end. I know my hardcore Evo enthusiasts are with me watching this progress, and I certainly appreciate it. On the other end, if you're just a hater and want to tell me I did something wrong, yeah, feel free. I probably did do something wrong. Go ahead. I can try to do something better in the future, or I can pin your comment that has the right way of doing stuff. Because after all, I'm just a guy on YouTube likes to document what he does. So, as always, this is Paul from Boosted Film saying thanks so much for watching. I just want to say that domestic violence is never okay. If you or someone you know is experiencing issues with a partner and doesn't feel safe, please visit the website thehotline.org or call 1-800-799-SAFE.